So I created this yoga practice for people to use as a daily spiritual practice. It contains some mantra practice, teachings about yama niyama, some asana practice, pranayam, bandhas, meditation. So it's a daily spiritual yoga practice. It's based very heavily upon the practice taught by my Guru Subramanya Swami. He is a part of Patanjali's lineage. It's based upon the practice that I learned from him, and based upon also my experience with Ayurveda. This is a practice that's balancing for all people. It helps, the asanas help them to sit, helps to open them spiritually. So we want to talk a little bit about how to practice this practice for the greatest benefit. Clothing that you wear should be loose, comfortable. Tight clothes we call yoga pants. This kind of thing is not appropriate. In the practice of yoga, the pranas deepen. The awareness goes from outside to inside to focus within. Wear loose fitting, comfortable clothes. Organic material, ideally. Cotton. Clean clothes. Bathe before. If you get sweaty during, bathe after also. Bathe before the practice so you come clean, not distracted. Should be practiced with mindfulness, humbleness, and devotion. There is some potential for hurting oneself if the practice is not done properly. It's important to try to learn these asana practices and pranayams from a teacher who knows what they're doing. Someone who's gone through a 200-hour yoga teaching program probably does not have enough knowledge to teach you. You may need to consult a doctor or an Ayurvedic physician to make sure these practices will be safe and good for you to do. In India, traditional yoga programs that train teachers will get people to practice for 5 years before they teach, that kind of thing. So just not every yoga teacher may be qualified. Can be some risk for injury. They're very powerful practices, but they're generally very safe if you go at it gently, easily. If you have any doubt about the safety or your ability to do it, consult an Ayurvedic doctor or a Western allopathic doctor. We will have opportunities coming up for people who travel to Richmond. For now, we're doing initiations for this yoga practice, spiritual initiations. For now, you'll have to come to Richmond. In the future, maybe we'll be able to do it in other places. If you have any of the following conditions, avoid the practice and other spiritual practices potentially. If you're pregnant, if you're menstruating, from the start of menses, wait 5 days, ideally. If you're recovering from surgery or a serious illness, if you have a cold, fever, or infection, if you're bleeding, or if you have a cut which hasn't formed a scab, if you've eaten food within the last 2 hours, or if you're planning to eat within the next 45 minutes, if you're not practicing the preliminary practices of yama and niyama. We have some teachings on those here on the YouTube channel. Others are available through our website for a small fee. You can have a whole course teaching about all this practice. If you've experienced an outburst of anger within the last 3 days, you may want to take a break from the practice. If you have a close family member who's died or been born within the last 31 days, if you have high blood pressure, heart disease, recent surgery, back injury, sciatica, a slipped or a bulging disc, low blood pressure, diarrhea, neck injury, history of stroke or epilepsy, anemia or headache, you may want to be very cautious doing these practices. If you have any of the following conditions, you want to be very careful and approach the yoga practice very gently, very slowly. It may be possible to do it, but you want to be very gentle. You may want to get the advice of a yoga therapist, a doctor, or an Ayurvedic practitioner. If you have a wrist or knee injury, you may need to modify the poses. If you have history of mental illness or insomnia, if you have osteoporosis or arthritis, MS or Parkinson's or other conditions of the nervous system, if you have irritable bowel syndrome, or other conditions of the intestine or colon. Any chronic or acute condition, really, you need to be careful, because the poses are powerful to have a certain effect and may make your condition worse. So guidelines for doing the practice: always move slowly and gently between postures, and do not jerk or force the body into position. So 1 or 2 asanas only that you want to jerk the body into position. If you can't slowly, gently come into the pose, you need to gently, slowly work toward that, building up more strength. Forcing yourself will create an injury. It's not always possible to know whether you are in proper alignment in a posture, and it's therefore recommended that you seek the advice of a qualified yoga teacher or yoga therapist who can tell you if you're in proper alignment. Proper alignment is very important, otherwise the benefits of the asana will not be realized. Do not strain. As you come slowly into the posture, extend only until you begin to feel a strain, slight strain. Stop and come back slightly so you feel the faintest sensation of a strain. This is a stretch which will increase flexibility. To extend beyond this point will cause injury. As a person gently stretches the muscles without straining, tension is released, and this increases flexibility over time. It's possible to increase flexibility more quickly by straining, but this causes injury to the body and does not allow for proper alignment. Even if you hold a pose just for about a minute, you'll notice the tension releases and you can go a little bit further. Gentle, slow, gradual progress we're striving for. It's not a competition, it's not a race. Do not overextend, hyperextend, or hyperextend any part of the body. If you have any question about this, consult a qualified yoga therapist. Monitor your breathing. It should be regular and even throughout. If you begin to breathe heavily or sweat, come out of a pose and take a rest. This is not intended to be an aerobic exercise, and therefore you shouldn't increase your sweat and your breathing. A regular regimen of aerobic exercise should be maintained in addition to this set of yoga asanas. Hold each pose for the right amount of time for your body, a maximum only of 1.5 minutes, maybe 15 seconds or 30 seconds as you begin. It's difficult to tell how long to hold the pose for, perhaps. You're coming into resonance with the energy of the pose. This is the ideal. Think of a musical string, my guru used to say. Think of a musical string being tuned. You hear one note, and the string's not quite there, you turn it a little bit, it comes into resonance, and then they're vibrating together, these 2 notes, same pitch. You want your body to come into resonance with the energy of the asana. You've got to be in proper alignment. You don't have to be doing the asana perfectly. You don't have to touch your head to your knee, you don't have to touch your toes, but if you're bending in the right way, you'll be getting the effect of that asana. And when you come energetically into resonance with the pose, you're good. You'll feel yourself buzzing in the energy of the pose, and you can stop. If we continue in this video longer, just take a rest, keep the visualization, but stop. In time you'll build up, gradually, over months, over years you'll build up, and then you can maybe do 1.5 minutes. More than that's generally not necessary. You'll just hurt yourself. If you feel pain in the middle of holding any pose, come out slowly, stop doing the posture. Discontinue that particular practice and seek the advice of a yoga teacher or yoga therapist. If you feel pain after the practice, discontinue the entire practice and seek the advice of a yoga teacher or yoga therapist. Small amount of soreness may be normal. Anything more than that, you want to be careful, you want to stop. You don't want to injure yourself doing this. Do not aim for perfection in the posture the first time you attempt it. It may take many months or years to master it. Do not judge yourself for not being able to do the poses perfectly. Accept where you are. Work from that point toward perfection according to your capacity. Do not compare yourself with others. And try not to expect any specific achievement. Be aware of your body and the current limitations. Do not hesitate to use a prop, like a cushion, a bolster, a blanket, whatever may help you. You can't take your head to the ground, put a block there, put a cushion there, that's fine, it's good. A few points to remember when practicing. You alone are responsible for your state of being. The practice of yoga helps you to come to peace with the condition of the body and the outer world over which you have no control. You have no control over the body, no control over the outer world. Yoga helps us come to peace with this, not to gain control of the world, not to gain control of the body, not to gain control of the thoughts and feelings in the mind, but to come to peace with it so they don't affect us. The yogi is impervious. He's not some egotistical maniac running around trying to control everything. He's impervious. He's just not bothered by it. Yoga helps us in this way. When we get comfortable doing these stretches, then we're comfortable as we walk around. And when something unexpected comes, we're comfortable. We don't get injured. We don't get thrown off. We stay at a place of peace. The practice of yoga will reveal the subconscious feelings and thoughts which are hidden from the conscious mind. As these rise, we must be mindful to maintain a sense of personal responsibility for our own inner state and be careful not to blame other people or circumstances around us for our own state. If we can observe the thoughts and feelings as they rise from the subconscious, they will pass. If we blame others or act upon these thoughts and feelings, we will increase our karma and attachment to them. The practice of yoga helps a person to see spiritual light and experience the divine self. Before a person comes into these experiences, it is usual they will have to progress through much darkness of the vasanas of the subconscious mind. To know our higher self, we must first really know our lower self. Beginning practice can seem like entering into a dark tunnel and heading for the eventual light at the other end. When difficulties arise, or if a person feels overwhelmed by their practice, it is more important in this time to not discontinue the practice, which has a balancing effect in a time of crisis. At this time, it is wise to seek the counsel of a qualified spiritual teacher, the association of those deeply immersed in their own spiritual practice, and to cling to the practice itself for strength and support. If a person discontinues the practice as difficulties arise, the potential for creating much more difficult karma to face in the future is great. We must remain dedicated to the practice. Realization or even noticeable progress does not come overnight, though there are often signs as a person begins to practice. In order to see noticeable change in the world around us, we must come to a different state within. It is wise to expect that it may require years of unrewarded practice in order to see steady progress. Though progress in yoga is generally not possible without the grace of a guru, the student must remember that the guru does not ever do the work for the student. Each individual's state of realization, their fate and their karma is their own responsibility alone. The guru may empower the student's efforts to alter these for the better, but the guru never does the work for the student. We must have a great sense of responsibility and humility to progress. We must simultaneously strive to better ourselves and realize that success in our efforts is beyond our control. We pray for grace and work to be worthy of it. Grace comes to those who are patient, persistent, dedicated, and humble.